So, today I decided I'd try to talk a bit about books, at least partially because I'm not quite halfway through the graveyard book. I just got up from a nap because I went to bed early yesterday afternoon because I was tired, and so I woke up very early this morning and I was tired, so I took a nap. I also set my alarm clock just in case my body decided that, no, you know what, we're gonna lay here and you'll miss your opportunity today. That happens sometimes. So this might make a little more sense if I try to handle it chronologically. I used to be, if not a bigger reader, a more regular one. All the time growing up, I was reading. Mostly fantasy books because that's what was available to me. I was mostly reading books that were already in the house. So, Tolkien, a lot of Pierce Anthony, Robert Aspin's Myth series, a lot of fantasy books, but not entirely. There was some sci-fi in there, some classics, but not a lot of the standard ones, and even those I didn't read in school, or a lot of the books that most people say they read in school because they wanted to or because they had to, were not the ones that I got. I read my first Shakespeare when I was 11. I had a copy of Julius Caesar and read it for fun. You did already realize I was weird, right? That's probably a little weird. Now, moving forward, and as I mentioned when the idea of this as a topic came up, is these interfered. And this is another one of those places where the having had cancer comes back in, because the reason why I have these is because I developed cataracts and they progressed rather rapidly, and I needed to have cataract surgery. This also happened during, well, the development happened during the last year and a bit of my undergrad, which I didn't realize until after is why I couldn't do microscopy. I was a double science major and couldn't do microscopy because I couldn't see through them. I didn't realize until after that, while yes, the microscopes were probably treated and handled poorly by some students, what I was actually seeing wasn't the damaged lenses on the microscopes. I was actually seeing the damage on my own lenses, which in hindsight was really cool, and I wish I had taken the opportunity to, map it out or something, but I didn't realize until they were removed. Because cataracts are damage to the lens of your eye. I couldn't really read blackboards. I couldn't read road signs, especially at night. Cataracts give you profound glare is the easiest way to describe it, but that's not the entirety of it. It's just everything. Because if you've looked through a dirty car windshield, if the light hits it, all you can see is the glare off of all the little bits of junk on your windshield. It's like that. There's all this built up damaged junk on your lens, and the light refracts off of that, and you can't see anything else. It got to the point where when I'd gone to the eye doctor, he said that, yeah, if it kept on in this pace in another year, you'd be blind, if not sooner. When I got it dealt with, it had gotten to the point where I hadn't felt safe driving in longer than was probably okay, but I didn't really have options. But with the cataract surgery, they remove that damaged lens, and give you an artificial lens, which is prescription for far, and near, because it's not as flexible as a normal natural lens, you need varying sets of these. These are actually the ones that are the right focal length for me to see the little screen on this, but the screen for my computer. Other ones, these are the ones I generally go out with. And yeah, I have the different strengths in different colors and styles, so I know on sight which ones are which. Because each pair of reading glasses only has a couple inches of focal length, meaning the distance in space where, oh, I can see, nope, that's blurry. So that means that the positions I have to be in to see anything clearly, unless it's far, like I can see things on the wall behind there just fine, because far. But for near, I need different strengths of glasses for different size text and different distance from me. Like, if it's small print, it has to be close so that the stronger glasses can magnify it so that I can read it. Which leads into why reading, or at least reading physical books, became a problem. Because there is no way to do that comfortably, especially not for long periods, which novels require. The last novel that I read for fun was before my cataract surgery, and it was Tiffios, when it first came out. That was actually the first of John's books that I read, because I got into Nerdfighteria in 2011. I own all of his books. I only physically read that one. All the others, except for Let It Snow, which doesn't have an audiobook, I have had to listen to on audiobook. Because despite having them physically, I couldn't bring myself to read them. Just like I bought Hank's book and had to listen to the audiobook of that, too. So, save for manga and comic books, things that are shorter reads, the stuff that I have read physically has either been for school or been a manga that you can sit and go entirely through in an hour or less. So it's not generally long enough for the relative rigidity required for any position and any strength of glasses, because I don't want to have to be sitting there with 4 pairs of glasses just in case I shift a little bit to be more comfortable, and oh, now I can't see. And I have to be able to hold it just so at the right angle. Just the idea of it is exhausting. Never mind the actual physical discomfort of trying to get it just so. Now, mind you, I've read quite a lot of manga. Not recently, but I've read thousands. A lot of those were online. I don't actually physically own copies of most of those. It's not like I stopped reading, but how and what I read changed. Now, I had trouble getting the audiobook for John's most recent book, Turtles All the Way Down. I had tried more than once from more than one place to buy it on CD. A digital download would have been nice, but places weren't providing that. It was just CD versions. And the discs were damaged, like unplayable, untransferable, damaged every time. So they all went back. Of course, I got my money back, but that led to me actually finding out that the town I live in, which is a small place, actually has library offerings online, both ebooks and, even better, audiobooks. And it's the only book of John's they have, at least an audiobook, but they had it. So I had to finally. I've lived in this town since 2004. I had not previously had any reason to go get a library card because I'd still have to leave the house and go to the library, which, being a shut-in with hours that also aren't really compatible with that, even if I were so inclined, going to a library to look at physical books I knew I wasn't going to physically read, I just didn't bother. But knowing that I could access and audiobooks online, that's different. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I love libraries. I've made good use of them in the past. I just didn't ever see a need or a use for myself for this one until I realized that no, they can actually cater to my particulars. So I went and got a library card, and now I can log on to the website for that and browse what's available. I actually have bookmarked the offerings of Neil Gaiman, which I've been working my way through. I started with the shortest ones, partially because they were the ones that weren't checked out. I think it's Good Omens is the only one that's on hold for multiple people, because you can check them out for 20 days. And that one is on hold for 185, meaning there are 9 people in line after the person who's listening to it turns it back in, or their borrow expires. I've never had things checked out for more than a day because I've sat and listened all the way through them. Today's is the first one that I've even really taken a break with, and that was just to take a nap. But actually, let me pull up the page. Well, I say pull up, but I actually have it open. I can't read this shit. So, if I go in order, I have borrowed a Nancy Boys, which is 10 hours, and I did sit and listen to that pretty much all at once. That's also how I read, is I sit and work my way entirely through something, unless I have to stop for other things. Cinnamon is an almost 9-minute story that Neil himself read. Coraline I listened to, that's about 3.5 hours, also read by him. Crazy Hair is a 4-minute story read by him. The Day I Swapped My Dad for 2 Goldfish is a 14-minute one read by him. Fortunately, The Milk is about an hour, read by him. It is Good Omens that is going to be available in 184 days now. Odd and the Frost Giants is a minute 46, an hour 46, but that's going in order. There's those, and like I said, okay. The Graveyard Book is 8 hours 24, and I have 547 left. So yeah, not quite half, because I just have it paused and open on the listening page. But, so, that's what I've been doing for reading, is, well, I started with Neil Gaiman, partially because of his reputation as an author, partially because I actually physically own Anansi Boys, and it's another one of those books where I bought it with the intention of reading it and never got around to it. I have poked around at who and what they have available. I had also bought, partially because of Let It Snow, partially just because she is a secret sister and just longtime tangential to John, is Maureen Johnson. So I had gotten a couple of her books. I got 13 little blue envelopes and the last little blue envelope. Now, this only had 13 in audiobook, but I did actually finally get to go through that. So there's still the last little blue envelope that I haven't read in one format or another, and there's still Let It Snow, which doesn't have an audiobook. I've looked around online and there just wasn't one made, it seems. Or there isn't one available through someone I'm willing to do business with, because no, Audible is not an option. Partially because of DRM, partially because it's part of Amazon. And no. But yeah, that's what I've been reading lately, is a bunch of Neil Gaiman. Mostly, but not entirely, read by Neil Gaiman, who has a nice sort of reading voice, and it's not just because of the accent. I also tend to like things that are read by the author because they know how they intended for things to come across. So even if their voice isn't necessarily the best voice for a character, like John reading his own books where he is trying to voice a teenage girl, he is not a teenage girl. He's not female at all. But because the story has lived in his head, just like these stories lived in other authors' heads, I find that I tend to like listening to them tell the story that's lived in their head so long, because they know how they intended for it to sound. Something that helped highlight that for me was listening to Will Wheaton read his own books. Also, other audiobooks, he does actual voice acting. So he both has the trained voice for it, but being the author who knows how the story was intended to be told, I still think helps. But also, in his case, a lot of the books are literally him telling stories about stuff related to his life, so it being in a voice that wasn't his would have just been weird. Whether or not it's entirely representative or accurate, I have that idea in my head of, I like the idea of listening to an author tell the story. Other things that I've listened to, I really want to read in the loose, consume the content of a book sense of the term, rather than the literal physical. More of Cory Doctorow's. I actually started with Information Doesn't Want to Be Free because of my copyright course for publishing. I didn't need to read that for the class, but we did have to watch a video of him presenting, I think, content that was from the book, but just he was giving a talk about copyright-related stuff. And I liked listening to not only what he was saying, but how he was framing it, enough that I went and looked into his work on my own. I've listened to a couple of his books, and representing what he does and working with EFF, he has his own audiobooks on his website, he can't sell them through Amazon or Audible, even if he wanted to, because he refuses to add DRM. They require it of authors. That's not a the authors want it. That's a that actually goes right into something he said in Information Doesn't Want to Be Free. Something about requiring locks on products and they don't give you the key. The lock isn't there for you. In opposing the requiring of DRM on products he doesn't want DRM on, he has them on his own website. And my understanding of it, because I haven't gone through a lot of them, is that most, if not all of them, contain some element of technology gone, not necessarily awry, but to an extreme. Because I've gone through Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. Information Doesn't Want to Be Free. I'm not remembering off the top of my head what of the other stuff he's written I've actually gotten through. But he has a bunch of books on various aspects of society and technology, and many of them are fiction, and I do want to get through more of them. I've gotten to the point where I'm getting rambly and don't really have any other specific points I wanted to talk about regarding books, so I think that's a good sign for me to cut it here. If anybody has questions or thoughts or recommendations of things that they've enjoyed and think I might, can go ahead and leave those in the comments. I'm gonna go make myself some coffee.